Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UEN Defiance, watching the massive space station grow larger on the screen. The Galactic Federation's central hub was bigger than Earth's moon. Thousands of ships from different worlds surrounded it like metal flowers around a giant stone. "We did it," whispered Lieutenant Torres beside her. "First contact with alien life." Sarah nodded. But something felt wrong. The Federation had contacted Earth 3 months ago. They said they wanted to welcome humanity into their group of civilized worlds. But their messages had been cold, too formal, too careful. The Defiance docked at the station. Sarah and her team of 12 humans walked through corridors filled with strange beings. Some looked like walking trees. Others had 6 legs and glowing eyes. Many had technology that seemed impossible. A tall, blue-skinned alien met them at the entrance to the Grand Assembly. "I am Ambassador Kelth of the Zephyrian Empire," it said through a translation device. "Welcome to Federation Space, humans of Earth." The Grand Assembly was a huge circular room with thousands of seats. Representatives from 847 different species filled the space. Sarah had never seen so many different forms of life in one place. Some were beautiful. Some were terrifying. All of them were watching the humans. "Please take your seats in the center," Kelth said. "Today, the Federation will decide Earth's place in our community." Sarah and her team sat in the middle of the room. Above them, a holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly. Home looked small and blue and peaceful from here. The Federation leader, a creature that looked like living metal, began to speak. "We have studied the species called humans for many cycles. We have learned about their nature, their history, their capabilities." Images flashed on the display. Human wars, human weapons, human cities burning. Sarah's stomach tightened as she watched her species' worst moments played out for the galaxy to see. "Humans are aggressive," the leader continued. "They fight their own kind. They destroy their environment. They create weapons of mass destruction. They are dangerous to themselves and others." "That's not fair," Sarah stood up. "You're only showing our worst parts. We also create art, music, literature. We help each other. We explore and learn." The leader's metallic face turned toward her. "Silence. You are here to listen, not speak." More images appeared. Humans working in mines. Humans building structures. Humans following orders without question. "However," the leader said, "humans are also strong. They adapt quickly. They work hard. They follow commands when properly managed." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "What are you saying?" "The Federation has decided to offer Earth a great honor. You will join our community as a protected labor species. You will be given work that suits your abilities. You will be fed, housed, and cared for. In return, you will serve the greater good of the galaxy." The room erupted in sound as representatives from hundreds of species began voting. Sarah watched in horror as the display showed the results. Species after species voted yes. The Korthax Empire voted yes. The Melody Collective voted yes. The ancient Zarathi civilization voted yes. "This is slavery," Sarah shouted over the noise. "You're talking about enslaving our entire species." "Slavery is an ugly word," Kelth said calmly. "We prefer managed integration. Your people will be much happier when they accept their proper place." The voting continued. 847 species total. 847 votes in favor of Earth's enslavement. Not one single species voted to let humanity remain free. The leader stood up. "It is decided. Earth will be brought under Federation protection within one standard cycle. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." Sarah looked around the room at thousands of alien faces. Some showed pity. Some showed fear. Many showed nothing at all. But not one showed support for humanity's freedom. You can't do this, she said. We're a sovereign species. We have rights. Rights are given by civilization, the leader replied. And civilization has spoken. Your species is too dangerous to remain free, too valuable to destroy. You will serve, and in serving, you will find peace. As the assembly ended, Sarah and her team were escorted back to their ship. But she noticed that Federation guards now surrounded the Defiance. Their weapons were drawn. Captain, Torres whispered, what do we do now? Sarah looked out at the vast station, at the thousands of alien ships, at the overwhelming power of the Federation. Earth had maybe 50 spaceships total. The Federation had millions. We go home, she said quietly. We warn everyone, and we prepare for war. Against all of them? Torres asked, looking at the endless fleet surrounding them. Against all of them, Sarah confirmed. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. Sarah sent coded messages ahead, telling Earth's governments what was coming. She knew it wouldn't be enough. How could one small planet fight against 847 different civilizations? But as she watched Earth grow larger on the screen, she felt something burning in her chest. It wasn't hope. It was something darker and more dangerous. It was the fury of a mother protecting her children. The Federation thought humans were just another primitive species to be conquered and enslaved. They had no idea what they had just awakened. They had made Earth their enemy. Soon, they would learn what that truly meant. 3 years had passed since the Federation came to Earth. Sarah Chen no longer wore a captain's uniform. Instead, she wore the gray work clothes of a slave, digging in the crystal mines of Zerathi Prime. The Federation had been efficient in their conquest. Earth's military lasted exactly 4 days against their overwhelming force. Humanity's best weapons were like throwing stones at a mountain. The aliens had technology that turned missiles into harmless light and shields that stopped every bullet. Sarah's hands were bloody from the sharp crystals. Around her, thousands of humans worked in the deep tunnels. The Zerathi masters floated above them on platforms, watching with their cold, crystal eyes. They never spoke directly to humans. That was beneath them. Keep moving, slave, a Korthax guard growled. The 6-legged creature carried an energy weapon that could kill with one shot. Sarah had seen it used many times. Earth was no longer blue and green. Sarah had heard from other slaves that the oceans were being drained for their minerals. The mountains were being carved away for rare metals. Huge Federation ships carried away everything valuable, leaving behind a brown, scarred world. Families had been scattered across the galaxy. Sarah didn't know where her daughter was. Maybe working in a factory on some distant world. Maybe dead. The Federation said family bonds made humans weak and difficult to control. In the slave quarters, humans whispered about the old days, about freedom, about choice. But they whispered very quietly. The melody telepaths could read strong emotions from far away. Too much anger or hope brought punishment. That night, Sarah was lying on her thin sleeping mat when someone touched her shoulder. It was Dr. Marcus Webb, a scientist she recognized from Earth's space program. His face was thin and scarred, but his eyes still held fire. There's something you need to see, he whispered. Marcus led her through the dark tunnels to an abandoned section of the mine. There, hidden behind fallen rocks, was a small workshop. Other humans were there, working quietly on pieces of metal and crystal. What is this? Sarah asked. Hope, Marcus replied. The Federation thinks they broke us. They think we're just animals who work and eat and sleep. They're wrong. He showed her their work. Communication devices built from mining equipment. Weapons made from industrial tools. Maps of Federation supply routes. Stolen from guard stations. We're not the only ones, Marcus said. There are resistance groups on dozens of worlds. Humans who refuse to give up. We've been planning. Sarah looked at the crude but clever devices. Planning what? Revenge, said a voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Commander James Park, another officer from Earth's Defense Force. The Federation made a mistake. They kept us alive. Over the following weeks, Sarah learned about the growing network. Humans in every slave camp, on every world, were secretly communicating. They shared information about Federation technology, military movements, and weak points. The aliens thought humans were stupid because they came from a primitive world. They didn't know that humans learned fast. They adapted. They found ways to turn any tool into a weapon and any obstacle into an opportunity. Look at this, Marcus said one night, showing Sarah a small device. I built it from a translator and a mining scanner. It can hack into Korthak's security systems. And this, Park added, holding up what looked like a simple tool. Press here, and it becomes a plasma cutter that can cut through ship armor. But the most important discovery came from an unexpected source. A dying Zerathi overseer, badly injured in a mining accident, had revealed something in his final moments. Sarah was there, helping to dig him out of the collapsed tunnel. You don't know, the alien gasped, his crystal body cracking. You don't know the truth. What truth? Sarah asked. You're not the first, he whispered. Dozens of species before you, all extinct now, refused to submit. The Federation destroyed them completely. Sarah's blood ran cold. The empty sectors, the dead worlds, all species that said no to slavery. The Federation told you that you were special, that you would be preserved. Lies. When humans become too troublesome, you'll all die, just like the others. The alien died before he could say more. But Sarah had heard enough. That night, she called a secret meeting of the resistance leaders. We're not fighting for freedom, she told them. We're fighting for survival. The Federation plans to kill us all eventually. The news spread through the human underground like fire. Fear turned to rage. Desperation turned to determination. If they were going to die anyway, they would make their deaths count. Marcus worked faster on his devices. Park trained more fighters. And Sarah began planning something the Federation had never seen before. A coordinated uprising across multiple worlds at the same time. When do we strike? Park asked. Sarah looked out through the tunnel entrance at the Zerathi city above. Its crystal towers reached into the purple sky like fingers of frozen light. Soon, she thought, those towers would burn. Soon, she said. We need to be ready. Because when we start this war, there's no going back. In the darkness of the mine, surrounded by slaves who had once been free humans, Sarah felt something growing in her heart. It wasn't hope anymore. Hope was too gentle for what was coming. It was hunger. Hunger for justice. Hunger for revenge. And hunger to show the galaxy what happened when you made enemies of humanity. The message came through the underground network like lightning across the galaxy. Dr. Marcus Webb had made the discovery that changed everything. Sarah Chen was in the crystal mines when the coded signal reached her communicator. 3 short pulses, 2 long ones, then 3 short again. Emergency meeting. Drop everything. Come now. She found Marcus in the hidden workshop, his face pale with shock. Around him, other resistance leaders gathered in the flickering light of improvised torches. I found something, Marcus whispered. In the Federation databases, I hacked their historical archives. He activated a small holographic projector built from stolen parts. Images appeared in the air above them. Dead worlds, empty cities, broken civilizations. The Youthgari Confederation, Marcus said, pointing to the first image. Refused Federation control 60 years ago. Population, 3 billion. Current status, extinct. More images followed. The Helix Commonwealth said no to slavery 40 years ago. Population, 12 billion. Status, extinct. Sarah's stomach turned as the list continued. Dozens of civilizations, hundreds of billions of beings. All dead because they chose freedom over chains. The Federation doesn't just enslave species, Marcus said. They test them first. See how useful they are. When a species becomes too difficult to control, or when they're no longer needed. He made a cutting gesture across his throat. How long do we have? Commander Park asked. Marcus pulled up another file. According to their projections, humans have maybe 5 more years before we become economically inefficient. Then, they'll start the final solution. The workshop fell silent. Sarah could hear her heart beating in her chest. 5 years. 5 years before the Federation decided to wipe out every human in the galaxy. No, Sarah said, standing up. No, we're not waiting 5 years. We're not waiting 5 days. She looked around at the faces of her people. Dirty, tired, broken by years of slavery, but still alive, still human, still capable of rage. Send the signal, she ordered. All cells, all worlds. Operation Fury begins now. The message went out that night through hidden transmitters on 1,000 worlds. 3 words that would change the galaxy forever. Remember, our dead. Across the galaxy, humans who had learned to hide their anger finally let it free. On Korthax Prime, the massive weapons factories that armed the Federation fleet suddenly exploded. Human slaves who had been forced to build the weapons knew exactly where to place the charges for maximum damage. On Melody 7, the telepathic communication networks that connected the Federation went silent. Humans had learned to think in patterns that confused the alien mind readers. They filled the psychic channels with chaos and pain. On Zephyrian Central, the surveillance systems that watched over billions of beings turned against their masters. Human technicians had been upgrading those systems for months, adding their own code. Now the cameras and sensors served the resistance. Sarah's own target was the crystal mines of Zerathi Prime. She led a team of 50 humans through the tunnels they had secretly expanded over months of careful digging. They emerged inside the alien city's power center. The Zerathi guards were completely unprepared. For 3 years, they had watched humans work like obedient animals. They never imagined those same humans had been studying every weakness, every blind spot, every security flaw. For Earth, Sarah whispered as she pressed the detonator. The power station exploded in a pillar of white fire that could be seen from orbit. Without power, the city's defenses failed. The floating platforms crashed to the ground. The force fields that protected the towers flickered and died. But Sarah wasn't finished. None of them were. The Resistance had learned something the Federation never expected. Humans were very good at war, better than species that had been fighting for thousands of years. Humans had spent their entire history finding new ways to kill their enemies. They brought that knowledge to the stars. Within hours, Federation installations across 50 worlds were burning. Human slaves became human warriors, using their intimate knowledge of alien systems against their former masters. The Korthax military base on Titan III fell when humans poisoned the water supply with chemicals from the mining operation. Every alien soldier died in screaming agony. The Melody research station on Proxima Beta was destroyed when humans programmed the laboratory computers to overload the power cores. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The Zephyrian slave markets on Altair 5 became slaughterhouses when human gladiators turned their arena weapons on the crowd of buyers and sellers. Sarah commandeered a Zerathi warship and sent a message to every human resistance cell. Take everything. Destroy everything. Show them what happens when they make us their enemies. The Federation tried to respond, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Their military doctrine was based on fighting other organized armies, not millions of slaves who knew every secret of their civilization. Human resistance fighters didn't follow the rules of war. They poisoned food supplies, sabotaged life support systems, and turned children's toys into bombs. They used the Federation's own supply lines to spread death across the galaxy. On world after world, the aliens who had voted for human slavery found themselves facing human fury. The Zarathi lost 12 colonies in the first week. The Korthax Empire saw its fleet reduced to scrap metal. The Melody Collective's mental powers proved useless against minds consumed by rage. Commander Park captured a Federation communications hub and broadcast Sarah's new message across the galaxy. To all species of the Federation, you voted to enslave us. You voted to destroy our world. You voted to scatter our families. We remember every vote. We remember every name. We are coming for all of you. The message ended with a list. 847 species names. 847 civilizations that had condemned humanity to chains. One by one, Sarah's voice echoed through space. You will pay the price for your betrayal. In the ruins of the crystal mines, surrounded by the wreckage of Zarathi civilization, Sarah looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human fleets were already moving toward their next targets. The war had begun. The Federation had awakened something they didn't understand. They thought they were enslaving a primitive species. Instead, they had created an enemy that would not stop, would not forgive, and would not rest until every species that betrayed humanity was dust. The war had been raging for 2 years. Sarah Chen now stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, a massive warship built from the wreckage of 100 Federation vessels. Around her, the crew worked with deadly efficiency. These weren't the same broken slaves who had once worked in alien mines. They were something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. They were humanity unleashed. Admiral, reported Commander Park from the weapons station. The Helix Defense Fleet is in range. Sarah looked at the tactical display. 30 Helix warships faced her fleet of captured and rebuilt vessels. Once, those numbers would have meant certain death for humanity. Now, they were just targets. The Helix voted for our slavery, Sarah said calmly. They sold us to the mines of Korthax Prime. Show them the price of that vote. The battle was over in minutes. Human ships moved like predators, using tactics no Federation species had ever seen. They attacked from multiple directions at once. They used their own vessels as decoys and rams. They fought with a savagery that shocked their enemies. When the last Helix ship exploded, Sarah opened a channel to their homeworld. People of the Helix Confederation. She broadcast, you voted to enslave humanity. You watched as our children were taken from us. You profited from our pain. Today, you begin to pay. The invasion of the Helix homeworld took 3 days. Sarah's forces didn't just conquer it. They erased it. Every city was reduced to rubble. Every government building was destroyed. Every symbol of Helix civilization was ground into dust. But Sarah didn't stop there. The Helix had colonies on 47 worlds. Each one met the same fate. By the end of the month, the Helix Confederation existed only in history books. Next target, Sarah ordered, studying the star charts on her command table. Each red dot represented a species that had voted for human slavery. Each red dot was marked for destruction. The Melody Collective tried to surrender when human fleets appeared in their space. Their telepathic leaders sent desperate messages of peace and regret. They offered to free all human slaves. They promised to help rebuild Earth. Sarah's response was simple. Too late. The Melody had used their psychic powers to torture human prisoners. They had read the thoughts of children to break their spirits. They had laughed as families were torn apart. Now their homeworld burned under human nuclear fire. The Korthax Empire tried to fight back. They had the strongest military in the galaxy. Their warships were the size of cities. Their soldiers were bred for war. It didn't matter. Humans had learned their technology inside and out. Every Korthax weapon had been built by human hands. Every Korthax ship had human slaves in the engine rooms who knew exactly where to place explosives. When the Great Korthax fleet met humanity at the Battle of Centaurus, the humans didn't even try to win a fair fight. Instead, they turned the Korthax ship's own weapons against each other. Virus programs written by human technicians made the alien computers see friends as enemies. The Korthax fleet destroyed itself in a single, chaotic hour. Dr. Marcus Webb had become humanity's chief weapons designer. His laboratory ships produced horrors that made even hardened human soldiers uncomfortable. Nanoviruses that ate through alien armor. Gravity bombs that crushed entire cities. Bioweapons designed to target specific alien DNA. "Is this what we've become?" asked Captain Torres, Sarah's old friend from the Defiance. They stood watching a Zephyrian colony world die under a cloud of human-made plague. "This is what they made us," Sarah replied. "They wanted to break us. Instead, they taught us that mercy is weakness." The Federation's Grand Assembly tried to meet one last time. Representatives from the surviving species gathered on their great space station to discuss terms for peace. Many of them had changed their votes. They wanted to free all humans. They begged for forgiveness. Sarah's response was to ram the Vengeance directly into the station. She and her crew escaped in pods moments before impact. They watched from a safe distance as the symbol of galactic civilization exploded into a million pieces. "No more votes," Sarah said into the radio, broadcasting to every corner of the galaxy. "No more assemblies. No more Federation. You had your chance to treat us as equals. You chose to make us your slaves. Now you face us as your executioners." The war spread beyond the original 847 species. Other civilizations that had never encountered humans before tried to help the Federation. They saw humanity as a threat to all galactic civilization. They were right to be afraid. Human fleets struck at supply lines that stretched across thousands of light years. Human infiltrators poisoned alien worlds from within. Human scientists created weapons that turned stars into bombs and planets into graveyards. Species that had existed for millions of years died out in months. Ancient civilizations with histories longer than Earth's age crumbled before humanity's advance. The Zerathi had been the first major species to fall completely. Their crystal cities, once beautiful monuments to their culture, were nothing but glowing rubble. No Zerathi remained alive anywhere in the galaxy. The Tu'lhari tried to hide on the edge of known space. Human scout ships found them anyway. Their last message to the galaxy was a warning. They remember everything. They forgive nothing. Run while you can. If you were meant, the Quethnari attempted to use time manipulation technology to undo their vote for human slavery. Human physicists had been studying that same technology in secret. They turned the Quethnari's own time weapons against them, trapping the entire species in a temporal loop where they experienced their destruction over and over forever. By the end of the third year of war, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Trade routes were broken. Whole sectors were empty. Species that had once ruled star empires were reduced to scattered refugees hiding on dead worlds. Sarah stood in her command center, looking at the updated star charts. Of the original 847 species that voted for human slavery, only 200 remained. The rest were extinct, scattered, or hiding in places human fleets hadn't found yet. "Admiral," Park reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from the Galactic Banking Consortium, the Traders Guild, and the Scientific Exchange." Sarah didn't look up from her charts. "What was their vote?" "All voted yes for human slavery. Then they all burn." She traced her finger across the star map, marking the next targets. There was still work to do. Still species to punish. Still civilizations to erase. The galaxy had voted to enslave humanity. Now humanity was voting back. The vote was simple: extinction or exile. Most chose exile, but even that was temporary. Human memory was perfect. Human patience was infinite. Eventually, Every species that betrayed them would pay the full price. 20 years had passed since the first human uprising. Admiral Sarah Chen was now an old woman, her hair white, and her face marked by decades of war. She stood in the rebuilt Grand Assembly Hall on Earth, but this time, humans occupied every seat. The great chamber that once held 847 different species now hosted representatives from only 127 surviving civilizations. They were here not as equals, but as supplicants, begging for humanity's protection. The Yilan Republic requests permission to establish a trading post in Sector 7, announced a nervous alien diplomat. The snake-like creature's scales trembled as it spoke. Sarah consulted her tablet. The Yilan Republic voted yes for human slavery in the original assembly. That was our former government, the diplomat pleaded. The current leadership had nothing to do with that decision. Most of our species wasn't even born when that vote took place. But your species benefited from human labor for 3 years, Sarah replied coldly. You used human-built ships. You lived in human-constructed habitats. You ate food harvested by human hands. She looked up from her tablet. Request denied. Next. Earth had become the center of the galaxy. Where once there had been dead seas and carved mountains, now stood gleaming cities that reached into the clouds. Human technology, stolen and improved from 1,000 different species, had transformed the planet into a fortress of impossible beauty. But the real power wasn't on Earth. It was in the vast fleets that patrolled every corner of known space. Human warships with weapons that could crack planets. Human scouts that could appear anywhere without warning. Human soldiers who showed no mercy to those who had once betrayed them. Commander James Park, now an elderly general, entered the assembly hall. His mechanical leg clicked against the floor as he walked. He had lost the original in the siege of Korthax Prime, during the final battle that wiped out that warrior species. Admiral, he said quietly, we have a situation. The Zelthani Collective is requesting asylum. They claim their homeworld is dying. Sarah remembered the Zelthani. A peaceful species of artists and philosophers. They had voted for human slavery not out of malice, but out of fear. The Federation had threatened to destroy them if they voted no. How many survivors? She asked. About 50,000. The last of their species. Sarah was quiet for a moment. The Zelthani had created beautiful music. Their sculptures were considered the finest art in the galaxy. They had contributed culture and beauty to the universe. They had also voted to enslave her people. Let them die, she said finally. Park nodded without expression. He had stopped questioning Sarah's decisions years ago. The war had taught them all that mercy was a luxury humanity couldn't afford. In the months that followed, the galaxy learned of the Zelthani's fate. Their requests for help were ignored by every human outpost. Their refugee ships were turned away from every human-controlled world. They drifted through space, broadcasting their art and music as their people slowly died of starvation and disease. It was a message to every surviving species. Humanity remembered everything. Dr. Marcus Webb had become the galaxy's greatest scientist. His research stations orbited dead worlds, studying the remains of extinct civilizations. He wasn't looking for archaeological treasures. He was documenting what happened to species that betrayed humanity. We've completed the catalog of the Zerathi ruins, he reported to Sarah during their monthly meeting. 43 worlds completely sterilized. Not a single structure left intact. No survivors found anywhere. Good, Sarah said. What about the Helix territories? Similar results. The Helix Confederation has been completely erased. Their colonies are being converted into human settlements. All traces of their language and culture have been eliminated. Sarah nodded in satisfaction. It wasn't enough to just kill their enemies. Their very existence had to be forgotten, as if they had never been. But not all species had been destroyed. Some had been allowed to survive in a state of permanent servitude. The irony was intentional. Species that had voted to enslave humanity now worked as slaves for human masters. The Vorthok, who had once operated massive slave markets, now served as laborers in human mines. They were fed just enough to stay alive, worked until they collapsed, and replaced when they died. Their children were raised knowing only obedience. The Killian hive, which had provided psychic torturers for human prisoners, now had their minds controlled by human telepathic technology. They existed as living robots, their consciousness suppressed, their bodies used for dangerous work in radiation zones. The few species that had tried to remain neutral during the war fared little better. Neutrality, humanity decided, was just another form of betrayal. If you weren't with humanity, you were against them. On the anniversary of the first uprising, Sarah gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. She stood before a monument made from the melted remains of Federation ships, her voice carrying to every world under human control. 20 years ago, 847 species voted to enslave humanity, she began. They saw us as primitive animals fit only for labor. They divided our families. They destroyed our world. They planned to exterminate us when we became inconvenient. The camera panned across the crowd of humans listening to her words. Children who had been born during the war years. Veterans, scarred by decades of fighting. Scientists who had turned alien technology into instruments of revenge. Today, 647 of those species are extinct. Their worlds are ours. Their resources serve humanity. Their names exist only as warnings to others. She paused, letting the weight of those numbers settle in the minds of everyone listening. To the 200 species that still survive. You exist only because we allow it. You breathe only because we have not yet decided to stop you. Remember this when you think of betrayal. Remember this when you dream of rebellion. The broadcast ended with images of human fleets patrolling the galaxy. Massive ships that dwarfed anything the old Federation had possessed. Weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. Soldiers who had been raised from childhood to hate humanity's enemies. In a quiet moment after the speech, Sarah stood alone in her office, looking out at the stars. Sometimes she wondered if they had gone too far. If the species they had destroyed might have changed. Given time. Then, she remembered the vote. 847 to 0. Every single species in the galaxy choosing to enslave her people. Every single one deciding that humanity deserved chains. She pushed the doubts away. They had made their choice. Now they lived with the consequences. A young aide entered her office, carrying reports from the outer sectors. Admiral, we've detected signs of a new civilization beyond the galactic rim. They appear to be spacefaring. The Markley NC. Rosive? Sarah looked at the data. Another species. Another potential threat. Another civilization that might one day vote against humanity. Send a message to their space, she ordered. Tell them about us. Tell them what happens to those who make humanity their enemy. Give them a chance to choose wisely. Send. The aide nodded and left. Sarah returned to her window, watching the stars. Out there, human ships carried automated beacons that broadcast the same message to every corner of the galaxy. We are humanity. We offered peace. You chose war. This is the result. Learn from their mistakes, or join them in extinction. The galaxy had learned to fear those words. Children of surviving species grew up hearing stories of the humans who remembered every slight and forgave no betrayal. Unmenin growed. The name humanity became synonymous with merciless justice. And in the silence between the stars, the ruins of 647 civilizations served as monuments to a simple truth. Some things are too terrible to forgive, but too important to forget.